Good morning everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Andy Mellon, Leader of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting. Just to remind you of some domestic arrangements, please ensure your microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations while others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. And finally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. So please could Cabinet members make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. And by entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film or photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I just want to say welcome to the officers who've turned up today to present and be part of the discussions. You're a long way away. I do need some binoculars, I think, from this end to sort of see everyone, but nice to see you here. Can I move to the agenda, please? Item 1 is apologies for absence.
None received, Chair.
Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. Are there any to declare? None, thank you. Item 3, MCA/23/16, to confirm the minutes of the meeting which was held on the 5th of September 2023. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? I've already got a couple of minor amendments which have been flagged up. Paragraph 26.5. The response would be is being changed to the response will be, just a correction of grammar there. Paragraph 26.7, capital expenditure would be carried over from the previous year. So just two minor corrections. Are there any others? Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Eburn, and a seconder? Councillor Winch. The governance officer will now conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. That's 6 votes for. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll sign those minutes at the end of the meeting. Item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received.
Item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
There are no matters referred, Chair.
Thank you. Item 7 is the forthcoming decisions list, which I'm sure we've had a look at. There are several decisions listed there that we're making today, and then we have several for the full council on the 26th of October, and then the next round are the decisions in the Cabinet meeting on the 7th of November. I did notice there's nothing in there on the JLP. I think we are expecting that to come to Council in November. Okay. Councillor Eburn.
And Chair, I wondered about the housing account, the 30-year business plan for housing, whether that was going to be coming at some point, or whether that was part of the budget, as it were.
Anyone got an answer on that?
So it would be a separate item, but yes, it hasn't been confirmed the timing.
Yeah, just because we would like to see that as soon as possible, so that can be on the list as soon as. Thanks.
Any further comments or questions on the forthcoming decisions list? If not, we'll move on to item 8. This is paper MCA/23/17, the variation of agreement of the shared revenue partnership. I understand that Melissa is not well today, so we've got Bob Palmer here representing, and Shirley Jarlett from Ipswich Borough Council. Welcome. But I'm going to ask the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, Councillor Eburn, to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is the variation of agreement for the shared revenue partnership. And I'm very pleased to welcome today, as the Chair said, Shirley Jarlett, who's the Assistant Director at Ipswich Borough Council, and she takes the role of Head of Service for the shared revenue partnership. And for those of you who aren't so much aware, as it does say in the paper, the Shared Revenues Partnership was set up in 2011 and became operational in April 2011, and is a partnership between Mid-Suffolk Baber and Mid-Suffolk, originally set up to make cost savings by sharing all administration relating to revenues and benefits. So that includes council tax, business rates, universal credit, and so on. And it is hosted at Ipswich Borough Council. And because of the arrangement between the three authorities, there needs to be obviously a legal agreement to set that up and to have that. And that hasn't been reviewed since 2015. So it was felt opportune to actually review that agreement and make any changes necessary. And the paper before you includes those changes that need to be made. The majority of these, again, as the paper says, are housekeeping type changes in terms of things that have come into place, so new policies and rules, changes of titles, changes the ways of doing things and so on. So it has just been kind of fully updated, as it were. It's quite technical, some of the issues there, so if anyone does have any questions, I will probably direct them towards Shirley Jarlett, but unless officers have anything further to add, particularly Shirley, if you've got anything further to add to that, otherwise I would propose the recommendation.
No, I have nothing further to add, thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. So I'd be happy to propose a recommendation at 3.1, Chair, and I would look for a seconder. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Winch. Thank you very much. Any questions from Cabinet members on this paper? There's no other members here to ask questions, so I think we can open the item up for debate. Does anyone want to debate this item? Councillor Winch.
Yeah, I don't think this should be controversial because it doesn't anticipate any significant changes in the role of the shared revenue partnership. There's a couple of things to mention in the document. There's the ability to call in, which I think is a good idea because it's important that every area of the council is subject to scrutiny. And the other element that's changed, there's a separate section that clarifies the delegation responsibilities, and I think it makes it a bit easier to understand what's actually going on. So I'd like to give my support for these changes.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make any comments? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we go to the vote, just to make the point that the Shared Revenues Partnership is a very good partnership working across the three councils and very efficient in what it does. But in addition to the sort of day-to-day work, it does also provide administration for help for vulnerable households, such as discretionary housing payments and the recent energy, fuel kind of rebates that many members of the public were eligible for. So it does have an extremely important function. So I'm very pleased to support this and ensure that the partnership continues in a well-run fashion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think that summarises the situation very well. We're very happy with the Shared Revenues Partnership. It works well for us. And so we can move to the vote on the recommendation 3.1, that Cabinet authorises the Director of Corporate Resources in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Finance to enter into the deed of variation at Appendix A to the report. And I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. That's 6 votes for. Chair, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the officers for attending. I'm sure you've got other things you could be doing, so thank you for coming. So we'll move on to item 9. This is paper MCA/23/18, the cost of living review of the 6-month plan and beyond. And I will now introduce this report as Cabinet Member for Performance and Resilience. And we have Samantha Lake, Corporate Manager for Customer Operations. We have Eliza Dale, Cost of Living Coordinator, and Sarah Wilcock here as well. So I will do my introduction, and then if there's any questions that I can't answer, I'm sure those officers will be pleased to help. So the Mid-Suffolk Cost of Living Review, the reports provide a summary of the work undertaken in the last 6 months and also the latest draft 6-month action plan, which is the 3rd action plan the councils have developed in response to the cost of living crisis. The work on this has been a coordinated effort across many services of the council, and also including key stakeholders such as the Citizens Advice Bureau, to support residents in several key areas: maximising their income, accessing advice, if I can say it, food insecurity, fuel poverty, and then health and well-being. And we're all aware that the cost of living is an ever-changing landscape. Inflation has fallen back from its peak, and in fact it's reported today that food prices have actually gone down. But there are still ongoing concerns regarding the cost to households, the cost of energy as we head into the colder months. And of course our Citizens Advice partners are reporting increased levels of debt and negative budgets. So the cost of living continues to be a key priority for us, and we're proposing, alongside the latest 6-month plan, to develop a longer-term approach focusing on prevention and building on our partnership working. So just to highlight a few things, our cost of living group of officers have continued to work with participation from the shared revenues partnerships we were just talking about, communities, housing, the customer-facing officers, and economic development. We've developed resources for staff, including a fuel poverty toolkit, a frequently asked questions fact sheet for frontline workers, and then clearly our communications department has been involved in targeted communications to raise awareness of support for the various schemes. And then we had broader campaigns across digital and print media, which have actually achieved over 1 million opportunities for people to see them between January and June this year, which I think is quite incredible. Just to look ahead, and the refreshed action plan contains various areas, including continuation of grants to support households. We're piloting a referral system with Anglian Water for those on lower incomes to be moved to a social tariff. We're going to continue to use communications campaigns to raise awareness of support available and to reduce stigma. And we want to develop a deeper level of insight into our customers, particularly those who get into arrears. And we also want to pilot some initiatives which provide support for young people to gain the kind of skills and access opportunities that will prevent them getting into debt. And later on we'll be hearing about the implementation of an employer-supported volunteering scheme, which will also help. So as we look ahead, we're keen to consider how we can broaden our approach to address the longer-term drivers of hardship. And we need to have a consistent commitment to reducing poverty embedded right across the council services. We're going to hear later about the refresh of our corporate plan, and that will feed into this work too. We want to make best use of our links with town and parish councils to better understand things at a hyper-local level and to raise awareness of support. But that's just a brief overview, and I'm happy to, from the chair, propose that we agree this report and the action plan. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Weller, thank you very much. Any questions from members of the Cabinet here? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. I just, with regards to the hyper-localness of it and the liaison with parish and town councils, and I was just going to ask in terms of sort of the frequency of that or how that was going to be enabled, but perhaps that's a question for an officer, Chair.
Yeah, we do have our parish and town liaison meetings, which I think are 6th monthly, if I'm correct. But I wonder if, Sam, if you've got something to add to that.
Thank you, Chair. So we want to actually ask the town and parishes for their views on this and the best way to engage them. But we do also want to utilise those existing town and parish liaison meetings. So it will be a blended approach. But we will be looking to reach out to town and parishes to gain their views on how they best like to be engaged as well. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other questions from Cabinet members? If not, we can open up this item for debate. Does anyone want to make a contribution? Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to sort of highlight one area in the report that starts at 4.12 with the record of 73 homelessness applications. Mostly 30% increase on last year, and the leading cause being people being evicted, as it were, from private rented accommodation. That just, it's a bit of a statement really, that shows that the work we do in terms of providing housing is even more vital than it ever was, and us being able to provide different tenures from the market is incredibly vital. So just wanted to say, this is going to be a challenge for us, I think, to make sure that we carry on that work and increase the depth and breadth of what we're able to offer. Not much of a question or a debating, but it's a bit of a statement, but it just shows that work, certainly highlighted there, is incredibly vital.
Councillor Winch.
Yeah, I'd just like to say what an impressive set of activities have gone on over the past year. As somebody relatively new to the details of what a council does, I wasn't aware of a lot of the things that have been going on, and it's a very comprehensive plan going forward. There's one thing I noted in recommendation 5.5 about the vulnerable customer policy, which is going to be scoped by the Shares Revenue Partnership. I wonder whether the vulnerable resident policy ought to be quite a core element of this plan. In that I think we need to look at every touch point that the council has with a vulnerable resident and how we react in that circumstance. And I think that should be drawn out and given a bit more emphasis.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. I think all of this work is really vital, and I'm really pleased to see the more emphasis on actually the real local level, because I think it's in local communities that people know their own communities, and I think to be able to link that in with this is be really helpful for particularly those who are in need. And just a point on the sort of inflation and interest rates, while they might be coming down, it doesn't necessarily mean that costs are all coming down. It said, food prices, as the Chair said, fell but only by 0.1%, but grocery inflation is still 9.9%. So it's still, a really hard situation for those who are in need at the moment. And so I think we need to, really continue with all this work, and I think it's really vital. And we have also got our a scheme coming forward soon on housing insulation, which also could could help in this area of work. But I do think it's really important that we continue to address this and both the causes of poverty, mitigating it, and particularly supporting those in need. So I will be supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further contributions to the debate? Okay. I do agree with Councillor Winch that residents need to access our services in a number of different ways. However much we work on digital inclusion, there will always be those people who are not comfortable accessing us online. So we need to make sure that people can get through on the phone, that they can see us face to face if they really need to do that. So I think you're absolutely right that we need to look at the how people access our services from the viewpoint of people who are vulnerable. I agree with Councillor Eburn that housing costs are going to be a real challenge in the months ahead. We don't know where interest rates are going to go next, but housing costs are very, very high for a lot of families, and the situation with rental properties is unclear. But I'm very confident in the work that our staff are doing. Very grateful to the hard work Eliza and Sam are doing, and the rest of the officers. So keep up the good work on this area, which is really important for us. So we have the recommendations in the report, which I'll just find the right page. Recommendation 3.1, to note phase 3 of the cost of living action plan and endorse the commitment to develop the longer term approach to preventing poverty, which seeks to understand the underlying drivers of poverty across both districts at a hyperlocal level through continued work with internal and external stakeholders, and to include wider engagement with town and parish councils. And I will now ask the Governor's Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress on your app. Thank you. That is 6 votes for. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we just need to take a short break while we sort things out for the next item. So 5 minutes? Okay, I think we're ready to resume the meeting now. Thank you, members. We're going to move on to item 10, paper MCA/23/19, the corporate plan refresh. And I will introduce the report as leader of the council, so you have to listen to me again. But we have Shaheen Warren here, welcome, who's the principal practice lead at New Local, who are helping us with the engagement on this. We would have had Jo Hobbs here, but she's not well, and I believe she's listening in. Jo and Rob, I hope you soon feel better. Anyway, I'll introduce the report and then we will see the presentation. So since the May elections, our new administration has been delivering an initial action plan, but we've also been working on a long-term vision and our strategic priorities to address the challenges we face and make Mid-Suffolk District even better. It will always be the council's role to provide high-quality services, but we are ambitious and want to see our towns and communities really thrive. So today we are setting out our vision, but our message to the public is, this is what we are planning, tell us what you think. We want people to tell us what they think is important, what we're planning to do that they're not sure about, what they think we've missed, and what matters most to their community. And we want to capture wide-ranging views from a diverse group of people, and we want everyone to help shape the future of their own communities. Now, our vision covers issues ranging from the homes we live in to the food that we produce and eat, from our local culture and heritage to the skills people need for the 21st century. At the heart of our plans is sustainability, doing even more to address climate change, building resilience, and preparing people for an uncertain future. We need to increase the supply of affordable homes, fundamental to strong communities, and making these homes, whether they are already built or in the planning process, fit for the future. We want to enable a bright future for our town centres, ensuring they become thriving places which connect communities and bring people together. And we have to find solutions to poor rural transport, which can be so limiting for people of all ages. Now, Mid-Suffolk is rich in heritage and culture, and we want to maximise the fantastic opportunities this offers, attracting visitors and providing great experiences for residents. And also we want people to lead healthier and more active, long lives. So why is it so important to get all this right? We need to put ourselves in the shoes of today's children and teenagers in another 20 or 30 years and think about what legacy we will have left for them. When they look back, what are they going to say we should have done more of? What are they going to be angry with us about? Serious long-term change takes time, discussion and thought. It also requires us to work with our communities. We want to lead the district in a more sustainable direction, but we also need to take people with us. And so first, we need to listen. Our draft corporate plan can be found on pages 111 to 119 of the Cabinet Papers. This is far from a complete and polished document at this stage, but it does set out the broad scope of what the administration wants to do with a long list of potential projects and approaches. Now, today we are launching the consultation with all members, with council staff, with stakeholders and with residents. We will be using a variety of tools and techniques so that we hear from a wide range of voices, including those who are seldom heard, and we've commissioned New Local to help us with this process. We want to end up with a plan that everyone feels they have some ownership and a stake in, even if they don't agree with everything. It should not be just the administration's plan. It should be the council's. Now, before I ask for a proposer and seconder, I'm going to ask for Shaheen Warren from New Local to give us a presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for the warm introduction. Oh, brilliant. It's up there. My name is Shaheen Warren. I am the Principal Practice Lead from an organisation called New Local. Thank you so much for having me today and for giving me a few moments to walk through a presentation that really outlines our engagement plan as part of the overall corporate plan refresh. I have a little bit of a connection to this part of the world. My in-laws live in Long Melford. They love it here. So I am a little bit familiar with the various kind of regions and districts here. Today I'm going to walk you through the sort of engagement plan that supports the overall corporate plan refresh, talk you a little bit through the strategy that we've gone through to kind of come up with the plan and some of the kind of delivery activities that we'll be taking on in the coming weeks, and then there'll be an opportunity for any questions that you might have. Is this going to work? There we go. Brilliant. So just a whistle-stop tour around who New Local is and what we do. So we're an independent, not-for-profit think tank, and we offer a number of different kind of service offerings. Primarily, we maintain a sort of network of 70-plus councils, of which I believe Bayborough Mid-Suffolk District Council is a member, and all the councils are sort of united in this commitment to drive community power in the places that they live. Meaning that they have a belief that communities have a vital voice in the process of being able to drive and lead sustainable community-led public services. We also have a kind of small but mighty research and policy team who work on the ideas that we face in our society today, so everything from kind of climate change, economic development, health inequalities, and really applying that community power lens to show that there is a different way of doing things that enables us to achieve positive outcomes for everyone. And then I sit in the practice team and have been working with the Bayborough Mid-Suffolk project team here to really transform those ideas of community power into action. So we work shoulder to shoulder with local authorities and councils all up and down the country to show them how to collaborate with people, communities, and transform the way they work. And just to give you a bit of a sense, this is a sort of spread of the councils who belong to our network. There's a kind of diverse range there, and then also we're supported by some corporate partners who are also invested in ideas around community power and want to collaborate more across the public sector and public services here in the UK. So as a brief introduction to who we are, and moving on to what our goals are for the corporate plan refresh, and how we see the engagement kind of supporting that process. As Councillor already outlined, you're embarking on a really ambitious plan to enrich the sort of lives and communities that live in Mid-Suffolk. And what we want to be able to do is to connect directly with community voices to make sure that that draft action plan is really enriched by community and resident voices, but also voices from your partners and internal kind of staff who will be kind of driving the initiatives that go along with that. So we've gone through a process for the last 2 months of really understanding what the aims and objectives of that engagement process should look like, what does it mean for the different groups that we will be engaging with, and how do we really best tailor our approach to meet people where they're at. So broadly, that folds up into 2 different groups. So we have our internal stakeholders, some of what we're doing today, presenting the plan to you all, and then working with internal teams to really understand the implications of an engagement approach for the corporate plan, and also build consensus around driving more community engagement across the council. And then secondly, we're doing a bunch of engagement with external stakeholders, primarily with your communities and your residents, to help inform those emerging priorities. So we're working, kind of New Local with the project team, and we've also brought in some very specialist community engagement expertise into the team to really drive the community engagement activities that I'll walk you through in a minute. In terms of our timeline, like I said, we've been in planning mode so far. We hope to be able to launch the community engagement this week, and that will run roughly until the 15th of November. And then we will feed those insights back into the corporate plan development process, and hopefully have something in draft before Christmas. So just a word on what we're going out with. So the priorities are really ambitious. We really want to be able to represent them in the best way to the diverse communities that we're going out to. And so what you'll see here is both a kind of tailoring of the language around the priorities, but really keeping to the sort of kind of core spirit and essence of what you're trying to deliver. And we do that for a couple of reasons. One is to make sure that the priorities connect with the communities that we're going out to, that they feel relevant in their everyday lives, and that communities are really able to identify with them in a meaningful way. Another reason that we do that is to make sure that we're able to kind of touch on all the diverse issues that are represented here and really get important and meaningful feedback that will inform the sort of action plan moving into the future. How we're going to do that, so on the right-hand side here, what you'll see is an overview of the content framework that we're going to use. So we've broken down into 4 key sections. And this is just the sort of framing that will help us engage communities, residents, and other partners in understanding their perspectives and opinions on the draft priorities. So the first one is about understanding what does thriving communities mean in Mid-Suffolk. What does it mean to the people who live and work here? The second bit is around kind of understanding perspectives and opinions on the emerging priorities. How do people feel about them? What might already be happening in place that is useful to bring into this work. The third part is around resources, so understanding the current spending profile and you know, opinions and perspectives on how investment should be made going forward. And then very finally, and more importantly in the work of New Local, is to understand what is the great stuff, what are the assets and the initiatives that are already happening in place that enable you to really amplify the work that you have planned, and creating some of that, as it was said earlier, some of that meaningful connection between your communities, your residents, and your partners to be able to do that in a collaborative and community-powered way. The method on the left-hand side you'll see is twofold. So we've got an online survey that we hope will go live this week, tailored to communities and residents, and then also something very specific for the business community. Again, touching on all of the same sort of aspects of this engagement, but ensuring that they are able to respond online and using Citizen Lab as the platform to do that. And then secondly, and probably where our expertise lies, is to have some facilitated sessions with those communities who cannot access an online survey and who are often neglected in conversations like this. So those seldom heard voices, that will be really important to understand their perspectives and give them the opportunity to contribute to the ongoing development of the corporate plan. And I want to dive into that a little bit deeper in a second, but just so you can see here are some of the engagement design highlights that we have. So we've kind of blocked up into 3 different groups. I'm going to start on the right. So we'll be consulting and engaging with partners, primarily with your towns and parish councils, with your business community, and with the VCSF organisations who are already providing both connections into the communities we want to hear from, but also providing that vital support, some of which you spoke about earlier, to the communities that you want to engage with. We'll then be kind of doing some engagement with staff to understand the implications of those insights that are emerging for the corporate plan, and we'll be going out to resident and communities to understand what are their perspectives on the draft priorities. So again, we're going to try and do all of that over the course of 6 weeks, and we have a lot in the diary already. And just to give you a sense here, what is really important about the way that we have approached the engagement design is to really be inclusive, and that means reaching out into those communities where voice isn't kind of a given, and where we have to work extra hard to really bring people into this process and understand how they currently experience public services and life in Mid-Suffolk, as well as what they want to see in the future. So we have worked with corporate managers across the council to identify what are those groups. Now this isn't a kind of non-exhaustive list. There are probably many more groups that we could include, but we've tried to strike the balance between where do we already have information in the council that can inform this process so that we avoid that kind of consultation fatigue and going out and asking the same questions multiple times to communities, as well as where do we have gaps in our knowledge, where could we kind of really afford to do more and to connect with some of those communities in a much deeper way. And so, in the table, you'll see what the groups are on the left-hand side, but also on the right-hand side, you'll see some of the avenues to that connection, and that we've been kind of assisted by your VCSF organisations primarily to make those connections. And this is kind of an evolving list as well, so we're continuously kind of adding new connections and events to this table. Just moving on then to the partner engagement. So as I said, we'll be running workshop sessions with towns and parish councils, as it was mentioned earlier, the kind of critical role they play in delivering some vital core services to communities. We'll be also engaging with the business community, both in the online survey, but also holding some face-to-face kind of meetings. I believe the project team will be out very soon with invitations to some of those events for councillors to be involved in. And just to say a short note on your VCSF organisations, we have seen just absolutely tremendous support for this way of engaging with communities. And I want to say that that's not true everywhere. It has been really heartwarming just to see how many organisations really want to help us connect with the communities who often get left behind, and have really been very gracious in offering us both their time and sometimes physical space to host conversations, as well as offering their staff resources to help us kind of further those conversations even more. As well as trying to involve as many partners as possible, we understand the validity and the value in informing neighbouring district councils and other public sector institutions where collaboration in the future might be really vital. So whilst we might not be engaging everybody and involving everybody on commenting on the priorities and giving their perspective, we're certainly going to take those emerging insights and share them more broadly and find those aspects of connection and connectivity and synergy where we can. So very finally then, what next? So we hope to be able to kind of launch the engagement process very soon, and when we have the engagement activities sort of diarised, there are a number of different activities where we would welcome councillors to attend, and we think it's really important for that connection to happen. In particular, I will flag here the sessions with the business community and the VCSF community will be really sort of important to have some attendance. Overall, the kind of calendar for community sessions is shaping up nicely. We have roughly 24 events already planned, about an equal split across Bayborough and Mid-Suffolk. And then we have some very specific asks. So hopefully that gives you a really kind of well-rounded view of where the engagement is going and the activities we have planned so far. You are all community facing. I think you have a really important role to play in this. So if you're spotting gaps, or you can see that there are other avenues to connect with the communities that we're targeting, please come and talk to us. We would welcome your opinions and your input here especially. And then very finally, we are developing a number of different kind of comms collateral and materials to help you talk about this engagement process outwardly. So whether that's postcards that you can drop in to your local community centre or a kind of local shop, or having those direct kind of conversations with communities, we want to be able to equip you to kind of do that in the best way possible. So alongside that media collateral, we'll also be running a session where we will talk you through the kinds of conversations that we're having and how to frame different parts of the engagement in case you are interested in doing that. And then obviously there will always be opportunities for you to shadow and tag along and be part of some of those events also. I'm going to pause there. Thank you so much for listening, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. That's a very comprehensive plan, and it'd be great to have a copy of those slides and be able to look at those in detail. Good, okay. Anyone want to ask any questions? Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, I've just got one question. Your penultimate slide, can I just confirm that the two pictures are at two different events and not the same event?
Yes, they are.
Okay, just checking.
And actually, the first picture is the rural coffee caravan. Yeah, okay.
I'm just making sure we weren't getting young climate activists protesting at rural coffee caravan events.
Any other questions? Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I had a couple of questions, particularly around engaging with the seldom heard voices. And I wondered if you could just expand a little on how that piece of work is going to happen. And I'm thinking particularly around the that work that doesn't involve online engagement with the process. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the question. So primarily we will be running what we're calling facilitated sessions, and the way that we have organised that is to use the VCSF anchor organisations and sometimes smaller VCSF organisations to identify where these groups exist, like where do they show up, where do they feel most safe and most comfortable, and how might we use existing events already in the pipeline to have a conversation around the corporate plan refresh and the emerging priorities for Mid-Suffolk. So it's very varied, if I'm honest, about how we will kind of engage. Some of those are through the rural coffee caravan sort of sessions, turning up, having intimate one-to-one conversations with people, understanding their needs, understanding the different ways in which to communicate, understanding the way that we might need to tailor that overall content framework that we showed you in order to be able to run a meaningful engagement process with them. Other times it's more formal. We will have a workshop, we'll invite kind of 25 odd people to come. They will have been identified as kind of existing in one of the categories that we've identified for targeting for the community engagement. So for example, Suffolk Libraries has been incredibly helpful to us, that both in offering their time, their space, and identifying the communities and being able to promote this within their networks. And they, we might host a space for those experiencing mental health illness, and again, we would tailor our approach so that it was really accessible to them. That's also not to say that we wouldn't offer them to participate in the online survey, which is why we're developing the posters and the postcards to be able to leave behind. But primarily, we want to engage in a deeper conversation around all of those topics with those seldom heard voices. And currently, we have good distribution across, I think there are 12, good distribution across all 12 groups.
Thanks. I did have a follow-up as well, if I may, and that's, well, I guess there's two parts to this. It's what's the timescale for completing this piece of work, and is there to be any sort of interim reporting before that piece of work's finished? Thanks.
So the deadline is the 15th of November, and so that is when the online survey will close and when we hope we will be able to have held most of those facilitated workshops and conversations. We're allowing a little bit of flex at the end there because, again, we want to piggyback off existing events, and so if time permits, we will try and do as many as we can in order to get that really good coverage. We will work with the Baber Mid-Suffolk District Council project team to develop a way of feeding in ongoing and emerging insights so that you're not waiting until the 15th of November to hear back, but rather we can kind of set a couple of different points where we can either, in whatever format is most helpful, either a short paper or briefing or a presentation so that you're fully aware of what's emerging and especially how that might impact those draft priorities that you have. Does that answer?
Thank you. And finally, given the relatively short timescale within which to achieve that, are you confident that you're up to it? Because there's a lot to do there, isn't there? I mean, potentially there's a lot of information to glean from a lot of different people. Thanks.
Great. So it's not just me, which is really good news for being able to keep up with the many different conversations that we're having. I feel really confident that we've had enough time to sort of line up the conversations. So we have organisations who are sort of ready to start, actively promoting the sessions in their networks with the communities that we're trying to target, which will just enable us to do so much more as we get into the real strides of the engagement process. And then, we are numerous. We're bringing in somebody who has very deep kind of community engagement expertise, so she will be deep in facilitating the workshops. and kind of having the conversations. And then we have a new local team who will be kind of into analysing the insights as they emerge on an ongoing basis, making sure that we're drafting as we're going and not waiting until that sort of end date to be able to do that. And then anything else that we may require from the project team, and a whole kind of mighty bunch of officers who sit in the background here, who, you know, have worked really hard to get us to this point, and will be working very hard to ensure that we're learning as much as possible from these really important conversations. So, yes.
Any further questions from Cabinet members? Teresa, Councillor Davis.
Hi. I'm just wondering about how you're advertising to the wider public of Mid-Suffolk. In what different ways? Are you doing any formal advertising?
So we have, and I might hand over to Sarah in a second, but we have a supporting comms plan. So both an internal comms plan and an external comms plan. Like I said, that is waiting in the wings for us to be able to promote. I think what has been really interesting and will help us tremendously is the amount of organisations who understand the spaces that they're in and who are willing to kind of push the message out more broadly. So, you know, in the work that we do with councils, we often find that a certain segment of the population checks in on council Twitter accounts, checks the council website, and we really want to make sure that we're going beyond that. So having other people who can advocate for the engagement process and be able to promote and support it in their own networks is a key sort of strategy that we're trying to use. And so we hope that will enable us to probably get into the spaces and the corners of Mid-Suffolk that perhaps we wouldn't get through if we were only using council channels. I don't know, Sarah, if you wanted to.
Thank you. Yes, just to give some reassurance, we appreciate that, you know, what we're asking is for lots of engagement, and therefore we need to be able to get that message out there. So absolutely, social media will play a large part in helping get that message out. We're also preparing communications that we can release through our media partners following today's Cabinet, if approved, that will again help that. But actually yourselves and other councillors will also be really critical to getting the message out there, and hopefully we can ask you to liaise with your colleagues, to liaise with your residents, and encourage that message of engagement. Obviously we've got lots of links across the organisation as a staff cohort as well, so we're absolutely asking our corporate managers where they're having touch points with other organisations to keep on that message over the 6-week period, that there's a variety of different ways to engage with us on this corporate plan refresh and to encourage that. So we've got lots of different avenues that we're exploring and you know, to keep that message out there.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So we do need a proposer and seconder for this report. I'm happy to propose it from the chair. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Eburn, thank you. So I'll now open the item up for debate. We've had questions on it. Does anyone want to contribute to the debate? Councillor Stringer first, then Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to say a few words about this. It's odd, before I came here today, somebody asked me in the cafe across the road, what business are you doing today at the council? I said, well, we're looking at a corporate plan refresh. And when they stopped yawning, I then explained to them actually what it was doing and what it was attempting to do. Because it does sound on paper quite dry, but it does completely set the direction, the speed, the velocity, who we take with us, and where all the resources will be channeled towards, and actually will really be the tool that's used to sort of really launch the direction and what future results we get. So it's actually incredibly important, and it is really important that we get the communications right and get all of those that didn't know they wanted to engage, including the person that thought it was dry and dusty. That will be the challenge, but I think it's quite exciting what we've heard in terms of what you're going to be bringing to the table. And it's also, I think, one of the mantras we want to use it with this council is we want to work with communities, not do to them, and that is really refreshing to see. You really want to work with, which is really good. So yeah, I think it'll be a challenge in more than one way, but I think this is a really good start to refreshing that corporate plan, which will be our blueprint certainly for the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think overall there's a very ambitious and broad scope of what we want to be achieving at this council, and as you've highlighted, putting social and environmental responsibilities at the heart of that to ensure we've got resilient and thriving communities, and to re-highlight what my colleague Councillor Stringer said in terms of we want to ensure that communities feel that we are working with them and it's not done to, so we are not producing policies that are then done and placed onto communities. And I think we are all part of communities, we're all part of multiple communities, starting with where we live, and I think everybody here wants to see the absolute best that we can get for those communities, enriching the lives and ensuring that we take them with us within this overall plan. And I too hate the words corporate plan, but there we are. That's what we're working with. But I think it's ultimately really important to hear as many voices as we can, and to ensure that they are that their views are heard, and that we're really listening to that. And I would say that this is a first start. I think if we'd had it a year to plan this, 9 months or whatever, we would actually be doing more. And I would hope that in the future we can actually engage. I hesitate to use the word constantly, but be always engaging with our communities in terms of what we're doing, and how anything that the council is working with is affecting the lives of those communities, and again ensuring that we do listen. But as I say, we have an ambitious plan, and it'll be really fantastic to hear what people have to say, and I look forward to seeing what we get. Thank you.
Councillor Winch.
Just to reiterate what Councillor Eburn just said, I think it's a very comprehensive community engagement plan. It will be really interesting to see what feedback we get from that, and I think it's a bit of a model for what we would like to do going forward on other initiatives. We don't want to be a top-down, we're telling you what to do type environment. We want to take feedback from the community to try and get the best solutions. So I'm really looking forward to the feedback.
Any further contributions to debate? If not, I'll say a few words myself then. So we realise there is a tight timetable on this consultation, and a timetable that's pretty tight to get the final document out. But we do want to align the corporate plan with the budget planning, so that the two kind of come together in early 2024. And very grateful to the work that officers have done, will do, and continue to do in the future to make this happen. People can sometimes be sort of fairly cynical about consultations. You've already made up your minds, now you just want us to sign it off. But I think this is a genuine attempt to hear from our communities and end up with something which people have some ownership in. We kind of know where we want to go with things, but we do want to take people with us. And I think at the end of the day, we'll have a plan which will give our staff a clear direction for what the council is doing over the next few years. So again, very grateful to the officers involved, to Jo Hobbs, Corporate Manager for Strategic Policy, and her team, to Sarah Wilcott there, and others who have been involved in this so far and will be in the next few months. And I think I can now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote on the recommendation to endorse engagement on the emerging vision and strategic priorities as set out in Appendix A.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That is 6 votes for. That's carried.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 11. This is paper MCA stroke 23 stroke 20, the Mid Suffolk District Council ring-fenced funding for electric bus stroke rural transport provision. And I'll now invite the Cabinet Member for Thriving Towns and Rural Communities, Teresa Davis, to introduce the report.
Thank you. Okay, in February 2022, we saw the budget amended to include funding for scheduled rural community transport using zero-carbon electric buses. Officers researched this and provided a summary, of which is in the appendix. This summary paused the project in February 2023 for 6 months. Officers have continued to research and liaise with a range of partners and key stakeholders to understand steps needed for success. Success seems to depend on awareness of demand, reliability of the service, flexibility to overcome restraints, and awareness of choice for potential users. 3 options have been provided to Cabinet. However, I would very much like option 3 to be our chosen future working model. Option 3 sets out to deliver public transport across Mid-Suffolk in as little time as possible by foregoing the immediate need to use electric buses, which have an approximate delivery time delay of 2 years. It also stipulates set routes with definitive stops, as well as a virtual and fully accessible booking system. It aims to progress the transport provider from a sustainable fuel, such as biofuel, onto a sustainable vehicle, which allows for us to harness new technology and funding, such as Zebra, which only recently became available in September for Suffolk County Council. The grant scheme also enables us to caveat certain needs, such as working in partnership for commuter services. The grant scheme also enables us to best fit on needs and using a multimodal sustainable transport approach. That's all I have to say, and I hope people will opt for option 3.
Thank you. We need a proposer and seconder for this this report. So, Councillor Davis, you're going to propose. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Weller, thank you. So, any questions from the Cabinet members? And we have Catherine Davis, Fiona Dumel here who can answer some of the questions if they go beyond what Teresa's able to answer. Councillor Eban.
Thank you, Chair. It's kind of more of just getting confirmation, really, in terms of the this paper that we've got before us today is one where it really highlights one of the key things that we want to do as an administration, and I just want confirmation that we will have enough resource at the council in order to take this forward. Thank you, Chair.
Not sure where that answer is going to come from. It might be to the person on my right. So.
Well, happy to give it a go, and particularly in the absence of the Section 151 officer, she might give a different answer. Linking this report to the previous report, I think the honest answer is it depends. And I say that because if politically your ambitions that come through the corporate plan vastly outstrip this item, then no, you won't have sufficient resource to do both. But as things stand, yes, I think you have.
Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this one, but I'll ask it anyway. During the planning process of the last few years, there's often been payments going to the county council for improvements to bus services in response to approval of new homes, certainly in some rural areas. And in fact, the approvals have been based on there being a bus service there, which has since, in many cases, dwindled. Are we able to access any of that Section 106 money back to the District Council if we are then going to be helping to provide those bus services?
Thanks for the question. Is anyone going to volunteer to answer that one?
Yep, I
can have a go at answering that.
Catherine Davies, thank you.
So we do just need to check the specific wording agreement of each individual case where that has happened.
Any further questions? Okay, question from me for the officers then. Option 3 is a kind of pragmatic approach, I guess, with the fact that we can't get electric buses anytime soon. But it doesn't, can I just check that it doesn't rule out the potential for electric buses should they become available?
Yes, it absolutely doesn't rule out the potential for electric buses in the future. And one thing to note is the proposal to hold back some of the funding to put towards a partnership bid with Suffolk County Council for some zero emission buses from a national government grant scheme that is emerging currently.
Good, thank you very much. Councillor Winch.
Yeah, the document mentions the East Suffolk Catch Service, which was started with electric buses, then stopped, and as I understand, it's been reinstated with a new app, but with diesel buses. Have we had any further feedback as to what exactly went on there?
Yes, we do now have a feedback report from that that has landed in my inbox subsequent to submitting this report. So we'll be analysing that. But we also have access to talk to the officers who ran that project and get sort of friendly and critical friend advice from them. My understanding was that the battery range on the vehicles that were used did not deliver as expected. So that was one sort of real logistical problem with delivering with electric vehicles for that particular pilot.
Any further questions? If not, I'll open this item up for debate. Does anyone want to make a comment? Councillor Winch.
Yep, I think this illustrates our commitment to making improvements in rural transport. I really strongly favour option 3 for 3 reasons. Number one, it's quick. We can get some quick results, so hopefully early next year we can see things happening. There's less financial risk, and it's flexible. So depending on what operator we're speaking to, we can adapt exactly what we do. If there's electric buses available via Gateway 14, we can do something. So it's much more flexible. So I'm strongly in favour of option 3.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eber.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would also be supporting option 3. I think this will help address an issue which communities are crying out for. And just to go back to the question that I asked, I think the key thing was we had money set aside for this back in February 2022. We, yes, we are developing a corporate plan, but we do need to actually be getting on with the what had been intended to do 18 months ago, as it were. So I think it's very, very important that we really press ahead with this. And I think just with regards to the resource, I'm aware that we have a very small team at Mid-Suffolk, as it were, working on this. So I would, wherever we can support that, then that would be really good. And I think we do, it's not a one-size-fits-all. There are several different options that we could do in order to kind of meet the needs of our communities, and we need to be, looking at those. So, as I say, very happy to support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, well, I'll just make a few comments myself. Obviously, public transport has largely been the kind of the area where the county council has been involved, and there has been obviously a big hit on public transport, particularly buses, from COVID. People were essentially told, if you get on a bus, you're going to catch something which could kill you, and understandably, people avoided getting on buses for a while, and it's taken a while for people to go back to bus services. And despite the fact that there's been various government support plans underwriting the bus services, there has been a kind of reduction in what's available over the last few years, even before COVID. I think it's really important in this area that we're kind of keyed up for partnership working. You know, money becomes available, funding becomes available in different pots and from different directions, and we need to be fairly flexible and try and work with partners like the county to access those and provide the service that our communities are looking for. It's a fast-changing situation, and you know, this most recent bit of funding was only announced a couple of weeks ago. But I think it's really important that we try and move forward with this. Option 3 is the pragmatic option that gets us something on the ground while we look into the new technology and see how that is improving and coming forward from the market. So I'm very happy to support option 3. If there's no further comments, I think we can, I'll just read the recommendations and then we can go to the vote. So the recommendations, 2.1, that Cabinet agrees for officers to proceed with the option 3 proposal outlined in section 4 of this report, whilst recognising the associated risks and the limitations with regards to evidence currently available that this investment will be feasible and offer good value for money. 2.2, that Cabinet informs officers of any further stipulations they wish to be added to the proposed next steps. I don't think we have any at this stage. And 2.3, that Cabinet delegate the further development and delivery of option 3 to the Director of Economic Growth and Climate Change in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Thriving Towns and Rural Communities. And I think on that basis we can go to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. You will have to scroll down a little bit to get to the blue line. That's 6 votes for. That's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the officers for the report. So we move on to item 12. This is paper MCA/23/21. The Baber and Mid Suffolk District Council's electric vehicle infrastructure implementation plan. And I will now invite the Cabinet Member for Thriving Towns and Rural Communities to introduce the report.
Thank you. Okay, it was agreed in 2020 that we have an aspiration of being net zero by 2030. Our recent Mid-Suffolk statistical analysis showed our transport as being approximately a third of our emissions. Our electric vehicle infrastructure implementation plan, or EVIP, and the GIS mapping has been produced to plot existing and ongoing public EV charging points and to give details on how Mid-Suffolk play their part in the rollout of the regional and national infrastructure of EV. Suffolk EV Ready report modelled predictions were used on a best and worst case scenario for public available charge points up to 2040. The EVIP addresses where Mid-Suffolk might install on their own land and help communities and business with these installations. The areas suggested in the plan are not set in stone and they will be subject to feasibility. For example, the cost of upgrading a power supply at that specific place. The EVIP is comprehensive and will aid in serving funding and planning for the future. I'm asking Cabinet today to approve having an EVIP as our starting framework for electric vehicle charging, as I feel it important that we are actively monitoring, implementing and encouraging this infrastructure. And I propose for us to take it on.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Eban, thank you very much. Any questions from members? Councillor Stringer?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Having had an electric vehicle myself for about 5 years now, interesting transition, many good things, but also many challenges. And one of the challenges is the regular availability of the infrastructure network, and that has been incredibly variable. Is it possible to implement into the policy a way of monitoring how often the infrastructure is unavailable? Because that certainly is one of the biggest bugbears to an owner, and obviously one of the huge barriers to people wishing or considering migrating over to electric vehicles. And if we want to maximise the latter, we need to build confidence that it's not just about installing a bright and shiny new charger, it's about making sure it works every time it's needed in year 1, 2, 3 and continuing. So I would ask, what measures are we putting in place to monitor how often the infrastructure is available?
Thank you for your question. So we've now brought or diverted one of our officers in the climate change team to keep a regular log of monitoring and a much more regular set of updates from the back office operators of the individual charge points. One of the issues we have at the moment is some of the historic charge points, there wasn't really a strategic plan in terms of the back office management of those, so they're all managed by different people. So one of the things we're hoping is as they come out of contract, we can, in probably a year's time, we can let a single contract for all of the electric vehicle charge points, so it will make the monitoring a bit easier. The other challenge we have, which is just a very practical challenge, is they run on availability of sort of Wi-Fi connection, and as we all know, that can come and go. So I think something we can put in the plan that we can look at is how they can be more, how we can get them more attached to perhaps some more secure forms of broadband, because that's part of the issue why they work and then don't work. But in terms of the actual monitoring, we have now got a dedicated officer with responsibility for keeping on top of the monitoring and hopefully identifying any trends that we might need to rectify.
It's slightly concerning that we're going to be relying on the service providers' back office data, because that's, with certainly my experience, where it all falls down. When they will say, well, I'll switch it on remotely for you, and then they don't switch it on. So their data shows that they've fulfilled it, but when in fact they haven't. And it's quite noticeable, there are a number that regularly do not work. And incidentally, one of them is slapped next door to one of our car parking machines, which actually works almost every single time. So if I can use a debit card in your car park machine, and it works every time, why can't it work every time in the machine that's right next door to it? So in terms of, I think we probably ought to, even in the short term perhaps, try and do a bit of monitoring, or have a way we can gather data to make sure that our service provider is living up to their commitment. Thank you.
Any further questions? Teresa?
In response to that, I'm thinking that we put this within the tender when the tender goes out to ensure that that streamline of communication is dealt with.
Good. Any further questions? If not, I can open up this item for debate. Does anyone want to debate this item? Councillor Winch.
Yeah, it's really good to hear that we're going to put in a monitoring process, because I can't emphasise strongly enough that the reliability is absolutely critical. I'd rather have less points that were 100% reliable, because it'll just bring the whole thing into disrepute, so it's absolutely critical. The other thing I wanted to mention that isn't in the document is pricing. And generally, if you've got a home car charger, you're not so worried about the price, you're worried about reliability and speed. Some of these charge points, or most of them, are being put in because people will not have the ability to have their own home chargers. So therefore, in these cases, the pricing matters a lot more, because it's going to be very expensive to run the vehicle. So I think the overall pricing strategy should be more explicit in the document going forward.
Teresa.
Well, with regards to the pricing is reasonably set at 48 pence at the moment across the board. But I don't think, because there's always movement in pricing, that we can potentially set a price in the document. In addition to that, there's also the obvious obstacle that users currently have. We've implemented these charges for people that are off-road. They don't have any off-road parking. So they're going to the car parks of an evening, charging their cars overnight. They're still having to pay 20% VAT on this, whereas if someone charged their car at home, they'd only be paying 5%. And that's a national thing that we need to have addressed as well. So the pricing issue, I'm not sure that we have enough information yet to place that in this existing document. But I will defer to my specialist.
Probably better that an officer comments, but my understanding is currently our pricing is below the rest of the market. So there's a decision to be made as to whether we keep it low or whether we try and put it more in line with market pricing. And all I'm saying is, because these charges are there for people who haven't got the home option, we need to be much more cautious about just moving to market pricing than if we had a charger on the A14, fair enough, let's just make it market pricing. Yeah.
Would you like me to come in? So it is quite difficult, for the reasons Councillor Davis pointed out, to put anything specific in this plan, because this plan will have some longevity and pricing will change, not least the power cost changes. We have done quite a lot of analysis. We are considerably cheaper than your average commercial charge point. One thing that we could do is make some reference in the plan to regular review of that pricing, maybe annual review of the pricing to make sure it's fair and accessible to all. So we could add that in.
Councillor Eber.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it's very important that we've got a plan like this in place, and I think that it's, with the changing circumstances of EV charging and so on, it's good to have it. And I'm particularly pleased as well to see the where we're looking at community-led infrastructure, because we get inquiries constantly. I know many village halls have already got things in place, and just to get some support on that going forward is really good. Thank you.
Any other comments? So just to add my two penneth, as I've been using an electric car for 18 months now. Certainly wouldn't go back. There is an issue occasionally about accessing a working charge point, but actually Stowmarket is really, really well served now. We must be one of the top towns in the country in terms of the amount of charge points we've got, and mostly they work. I've had one occasion when I've tried to plug in and had to phone the office and get them to reset it, which happened and it worked. But the funding that came forward for those charge points was, so that people who don't have access to a driveway could charge their electric vehicle. It's great that they're available during the day for visitors. My car is parked up at Stowmarket charging at this moment. But also they are there for people so they can go in the car park overnight and plug in and charge up. So we need to sort of promote that amongst people in Stowmarket. But I think we're doing really well. I'm very pleased with this plan, and I'm certainly happy to vote for it. And if there's no further comments, I think we can, I'll just read the recommendations and we can move to the vote. So the recommendation is 3.1. Recommendation that option 1 is taken forward and the Joint Council's draft EV infrastructure implementation plan is approved. 3.2, that the completion of the final documentation is delegated to the Director for Economic Growth and Climate Change in consultation with the portfolio holders for Environment, Culture and Wellbeing in Baber and the Thriving Towns and Rural Communities in Mid-Suffolk. So I can now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is in progress. You need to scroll down to reach the blue line. Thank you, members. That is 6 votes for. That's carried.
Thank you very much. We've still got 2 items on the agenda. Does anyone need a break, or are we happy to carry on and get it done, yeah? Okay. So, item 13, paper MCA/23/22, employer-supported volunteering policy. We've got Tom Barker, Interim Director for Communities and Wellbeing, and Vicky Mosley, Corporate Manager for Communities, here to support this paper. And I will now invite the Cabinet Member for Thriving Towns and Rural Communities to introduce the report. Oh, no, it's you, sorry, it's Tim, is it? Sorry. The Cabinet Member for, I'm going to get this wrong, Environment, Wellbeing and Culture. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Chair. As keenly demonstrated during the pandemic, volunteers are an integral and vital part of an active and engaged community, and we see the difference volunteers make across Mid-Suffolk every day. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the many volunteers who give generously of their time, skills and experience to support our communities in a diverse range of ways. Between March 2020 and May 2021, however, nationally, around 1 in 3 voluntary community, faith and social enterprise organisations reported a decline in the number of volunteers. And that decline aligns with the current experience of VCFSE groups across our district. Implementation of an employer-supported volunteer scheme has potential to deliver positive impacts for Mid-Suffolk District Council, the local community, as well as wellbeing benefits for those undertaking volunteering, creating a win-win situation for all involved. Recipient organisations gain skills, advice and expertise, while employees achieve a sense of giving back and making a difference. In return, the Council enhances its community presence and reputation with employees, residents and wider society. Through an ESV scheme, the Council can support its work towards creating social value and contribute to its priority outcomes. The Council currently have no formal policy on volunteering and do not actively offer any provision for employee-supported volunteering, unlike many of our partner and neighbouring authorities, including Suffolk County Council, Ipswich Borough Council and East Suffolk District Council, all of which support their staff to volunteer or engage with voluntary bodies through employer-supported volunteering. So this will be the first employer-supported volunteering policy for Mid-Suffolk Council, and I'm both excited and pleased to present this report today whilst thanking the officers involved in drafting it. I therefore invite Cabinet to note and support the implementation of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Davis, thank you. Any questions from members? Open up this item for debate then. Does anyone want to contribute to the debate? Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, declaring interest, I volunteer myself for a few things, too many to go through now. With actually one of them, some officers from this council. I have to say, this is a really good paper. I wish we had had a paper like this a decade ago. I think volunteering opportunities is really good for those that get involved, but actually I think there's something hugely in it for the council. It's a way of making sure that we are firmly rooted into those communities that we serve. And those little tendrils going out into all the various volunteer stuff that we get involved is absolutely vital to make sure that we, as it were, keep our feet on the ground. It's an incredible leveller. And actually, should be a great informer of policy, because I think councils are often seen as being incredibly remote, that do just what they want to do and they're not held to account and all that. Having us root and branch into our communities in all sorts of areas, I think is incredibly vital. And like I say, I just wish we'd have had a firm policy like this over a decade ago, but let's crack on with this one. I think I've got nothing but support from this. There's just one caveat I'd just like to mention, and this comment is not meant to be political, but I have to say today we've gone through a number of things about the strategic direction of this council, and 10 of the councillors that are not in the administration, not one of them are in the room today. I think that's actually quite disappointing, that we're not being held to account for what we're discussing today. So could I ask the Chair to write to the groups opposite just to remind them of what we're doing here at Cabinet? It'd be really good if they could attend. There could be various reasons why we've got no one, but I think it's vitally important we are held to account. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I'm sure the party conference season may have something to do with non-attendance. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to say, as has been said by, that volunteers and people giving up their time as volunteers is incredibly important and incredibly valuable. And I think without volunteers, many organisations and community groups just wouldn't be able to do the fantastic work that they do. And we're all aware that many of the employees at Mid Suffolk already volunteer and give up their time, their spare time, to contribute to different organisations. So I think it's really good to be able to put this into a formal policy, and I would very much be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Question from me then for the staff. Obviously this policy encourages staff to take part in volunteering. How many, or what percentage of our staff do we think are going to take up this opportunity? Vicky, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I will probably pass you on to B, so I just want to congratulate B as well, because it was B who produced and developed this paper and has been working alongside Community Action Suffolk as well, and also supports or represents the council on a kind of a county-wide or group to support the county-wide volunteering strategy as well. So I want to just give some credit to, or a lot of credit to B for the development of this policy rather than myself. We have done a sort of a quick survey through working together of staff that currently volunteer, and we also in the report sort of list the typical response from other organisations, other the county council and wider. So if I could pass on to B to provide you with some of the detail around the staff survey, but also then typical numbers that we would like to see. But also we are looking to promote the policies, but also we are actively working on a particular promotional piece at the moment around how we support and value and thank our volunteers within the council as well, and B can provide you with a bit of an update on where we've got to with that particular piece of work as well.
That's great. Thank you. Bethany, sorry for not introducing you earlier. Thanks for coming, and great to hear what you're doing.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. As Vicky said, we did do a survey of staff within the council. To that, I think we had about 68 responses. And within that, I believe it was around 60% of those 68 responses did volunteer. In terms of uptake of the policy, if you're looking at national levels, that's going to be hopefully around 20% uptake. But if we look at because I have also been in touch with our partners, so Suffolk County Council, their uptake level is just 2%. So we'd obviously hope it would be a lot more than that. Was there
Valuing our volunteers, the particular promotional piece about thanking our volunteers?
Yes, so we have launched a campaign around valuable volunteers, which is recognising the staff that already volunteer in their time outside of work. Within that, we are looking to thank the staff members who do volunteer, but also trying to get to the heart of what's really important about volunteering, which is people do it because they care about the cause that they're volunteering for. So we are, as part of that, giving a donation from the council, so £50 to each organisation as well. So far we have had some nominations coming in. We will be promoting that in the next few weeks as well, with nominations closing, I believe, on the 20th of October, and more information around that will follow as well.
Yeah, and just to say that that's you know, it's a small amount of money that goes back into that voluntary organisation, but again, we see that relatively small amounts of money can generate significant amounts of support for our communities, and we've seen that with various different grant schemes that we've completed in the last year around warm spaces and things like that. So it's just a thank you, and like I say, that we'll also keep an eye on kind of what that funding has been allocated to and the benefits and the impact that has, even if it might just be sort of small, but collectively it might be, you know, hopefully it'll be quite significant.
Tom Barker.
Yes, first of all, just again, thanks to Bethany, first time in Cabinet, so well done. Your nerves are coming through a little bit, but no, brilliant. I think we should look to get up to 50% of our staff who are volunteering with our communities. It would be far beyond what the national average is, but taking on board Councillor Stringer's points, which I wholeheartedly endorse, the extent to which it roots us within our communities, given that our headquarters is here and there's a strong desire to be more locally connected, I think we should be looking to get up to 50%. Personally, I'm a great believer that the professional skills that our staff could provide to the voluntary sector could make a massive difference to the voluntary sector. There's some balancing to do there, because some people might prefer to do something that isn't their day job when they're out volunteering within the community. And we need to find the balance where it's both providing for the kind of the well-being of our staff and their kind of motivation and productivity, the connections into our community, and then the benefits to the VCS organisations themselves. And we need to make sure that we're kind of optimising that balance, but I'd like to get us up to 50% at least.
That's great to hear about that ambition. Yeah, let's hope it happens. So if there's no further debate on this, I think we can move to the recommendation. 3.1, to note and support the implementation of the Council's first employer-supported volunteering policy. And I'll ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote. Or do we need to vote? Do we need to vote? We do. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is in progress. Thanks. Thank you, members. That's 6 votes for. That's carried. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Tom and Vicky and Bethany for that item. So we move on to item 14. This is paper MCA/23, revised safeguarding policy for children, young people and adults at risk. And Tom and Vicky are here to support, and I think Rachel Young are here to support this item as well. Thank you very much. And I will now invite the Cabinet Member for Environment, Culture and Wellbeing to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to ask Cabinet to approve the revised safeguarding policy to ensure that an overarching approach to safeguarding is bedded across the Council, identifying roles and responsibilities of employees, councillors and volunteers. This revised policy outlines the procedures to be adopted by the Council in ensuring the safety of children, young people and adults at risk. The revised policy picks up all current legislative requirements and expectations of local authorities and provides an easy-to-use set of guidance on how to report a safeguarding concern. To support this policy, officers have developed a thorough and detailed action plan which will see an increased focus on regular annual review of the policy via the Council's Section 11 audit process, greater sharing of related guidance and procedures, employee and councillor training, and the development of a council-wide safeguarding champions group made up of officers and from frontline teams to share information and best practice. The policy has been shared and consulted on with an extensive list of partners, including the Suffolk Safeguarding Partnership, our health alliances, local authority partners and the safeguarding training team at Community Action Suffolk. Along with those agencies, I compliment officers on this revised policy, together with its comprehensive and intuitive guidance. So in commending it to Cabinet, I propose approval of the revised safeguarding policy for children, young people and adults at risk. One of the recommendations is to agree that the Deputy Chief Executive, in consultation with the portfolio holder, have delegated authority to make minor amendments to the policy, and that's one of the recommendations that we're asked to vote on here. And I'm going to suggest at this point that if Cabinet's minded to adopt the policy, that one of the things we might include as part of that agreement for the Deputy Chief Exec and myself as portfolio holder to make minor amendments to the policy, that we might do one immediately following this meeting, and that's to make a couple of adjustments which I only noticed when reviewing the paper late last night in relation to citation of the Children and Social Work Act 2017, which I'm sure keen members will have noted is a piece of legislation that does exist in real life but doesn't exist in the way it's been cited in the paper. So care has been added, and care is great, but it's not part of that legislation. And the other amendment that I think needs to be made is just an amendment to adjust the styling of the Cabinet member responsible, because I think currently it cites a Cabinet member's portfolio that doesn't exist. But I'm sure that's a very minor amendment which just makes the document foolproof going forward. But of course that will only be amended if Cabinet approve the policy, and that's what I'm invoking Cabinet might do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Davis. Thank you. Any questions from members? Councillor Winch.
Can we just clarify how this is going to be publicised within the wider group, this new policy?
I might ask the Deputy Chief Exec to come in to talk about the communication methods. Thanks.
Using various methods to put this out to staff, including our working together newsletter and team meetings.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, I will open this item up for debate. Does anyone want to contribute to the debate? Councillor Winch.
Well, I think it's absolutely essential we have a policy like this in place. I think it's comprehensive and it's very clear and easy to read, so I'd highly recommend that we vote for it.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think in that case we can move to the vote. The recommendations, I will just read them for clarity, and thank you, Tim, for your attention to the detail there. 3.1, to agree option 1 and approve the revised safeguarding policy for children, young people and adults at risk. 3.2, to agree for the Deputy Chief Executive, in consultation with the portfolio holder, to have delegated authority to make minor amendments to the safeguarding policy in line with outcomes derived from the annual Section 11 audit or future internal audit reviews. And it sounds like some of those amendments will be made immediately. So those are the recommendations, and I think we can move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. That is 6 votes for, and that's carried. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you to members for their work this morning and for the officers who supported the papers that come forward. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 7th of November at 9:30 a.m. I assume we're back in here, are we?
I'm afraid not, Chair. We will be elsewhere.
Okay. Venue to be confirmed. Thank you very much, and I declare the meeting closed.